Millionaire brings a fake date to his ex's engagement, but she ends up stealing his heart. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Today's story is titled, Millionaire Brings a Fake Date to His Ex's Engagement, but She Ends Up Stealing His Heart. It all started on a rainy Friday night in downtown Chicago. The wind pushed against the tall glass windows of a rooftop bar where Ethan Cole sat alone, a half-finished drink in front of him. The city lights below blurred through the drizzle, like memories he could not quite let go of. In his hand, he turned a silver invitation card over and over again. Across the front, written in elegant gold letters, were the words, Isabella and Ryan Engagement Celebration. Isabella, the woman who once promised forever and left him for his best friend. Ethan's jaw tightened. He could ignore the invitation, but that would mean surrendering to the whispers that said he had never moved on. Some battles, he muttered, need to be fought with a smile. Ho. As he raised his glass, his eyes caught a woman near the counter, a young waitress trying to shield the drinks from the rain blowing in through the open balcony doors. Her name tag read, Maya Brooks. Her hair was damp, her uniform slightly worn, but there was something calm in the way she carried herself. When she noticed him watching, she gave a polite nod. Sorry, sir, the storm's coming in stronger than the forecast said. Ethan set his drink down, his voice low but deliberate. Miss Brooks, right? Do you believe in second chances? She blinked, confused. Excuse me? He held up the invitation card, the gold lettering glinting under the bar light. I need someone to go with me tomorrow night. A date, just for one evening. You will be paid well. Maya froze, unsure if this was a joke. You are asking me to be your date? Why me? Ethan's expression softened for the first time that night. Because you are real. And for once, I need something real in a room full of pretenders. The rain hit the glass harder, echoing like the heartbeat of a decision waiting to be made. She looked down at her damp shoes, then at the man whose world clearly lived in a different price range. How much are we talking about? She asked quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. Enough to pay a month's rent. Maybe 2. She hesitated, then nodded once. All right, Mr. Cole, I will do it. As thunder rolled above the city, Ethan placed the invitation on the bar between them. Neither of them knew it yet, but that one impulsive deal would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Maya stood in front of the mirror in her tiny apartment, her fingers trembling as she tied her hair back. The night's conversation replayed in her mind again and again. A millionaire had asked her to pretend to be his date. She still could not believe she had said yes. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. Black car will pick you up at noon. Dress for a fitting. EC. Maya exhaled, half nervous, half curious. The car arrived exactly on time. The driver greeted her with quiet professionalism and opened the back door. The seats were soft leather, and the city blurred by in a rush of gray and gold. They stopped in front of a boutique she had only ever passed from the sidewalk. Inside, everything shimmered crystal lights, racks of designer gowns, and the faint scent of jasmine perfume. Ethan was already there, speaking with a stylist. He looked different in daylight, sharper, more focused. You are early, he said, glancing at her reflection in the mirror. Good. Let us get this started. Maya tried to sound casual. Do I really need to look like someone else for this? You need to look like someone who belongs in that room, Ethan replied. His tone was firm but not unkind. Think of it as armor. The stylist began her work fitting a silk gown, adding subtle makeup, curling her hair. When Maya looked at herself afterward, she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Ethan's gaze softened for a second before he looked away. That will do, he said quietly. Now we go over the rules. He handed her a slim black folder. Inside were printed pages with his signature at the bottom. Rule number 1. No mention of this arrangement to anyone. Rule number 2. Public affection is allowed if necessary, but only in front of others. Rule number 3. After the event, our agreement ends. No contact. Maya raised an eyebrow. Sounds cold for a man who once believed in forever. His jaw tightened, but there was a flicker of guilt behind his eyes. "Just sign it." She hesitated, then picked up the pen. "You have yourself a deal, Mr. Cole." Uh. Later that evening, as twilight painted the skyline, the two of them sat in his car on the way to the event. The city lights reflected on the windows like broken stars. Maya's hands fidgeted in her lap. Ethan noticed and said quietly, "You will do fine. Just smile, nod, and let me handle the rest." She gave a nervous laugh. "You make it sound easy." He looked out the window. It used to be. When they arrived at the ballroom, cameras flashed instantly. Reporters turned, surprised to see the reclusive Ethan Cole with someone new. Maya looped her arm through his, her heartbeat quick but steady. Inside, chandeliers glowed above polished marble floors. Guests turned to look. Whispers started. Ethan leaned close and murmured, "Remember, confidence is currency here." Across the room, Isabella spotted them. Her perfect smile faltered for a heartbeat before returning. She glided over, her fiancé at her side. "Ethan," she said sweetly, "I did not expect you to come." Her eyes shifted to Maya. "And who is this lovely guest?" Maya met her gaze and smiled with practiced calm. "Maya Brooks, Ethan's date. Congratulations on your engagement." Something in her voice made Isabella's smirk fade. Ethan felt it too, the quiet dignity, the subtle strength. It caught him off guard. As the night unfolded, Maya handled every introduction with poise. When a guest made a rude remark about Cinderella stories, she simply laughed. "Fairy tales end at midnight. I am just here for the music." Ethan looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The deal was supposed to protect his pride, but now he wondered if it was protecting something far more fragile, his heart. As they stepped onto the balcony later, the city below glittered under the night sky. Maya's voice was soft. "You know, Mr. Cole, I think this was never about your ex." He turned to her, surprised. "What makes you say that?" "Because you are not angry anymore," she said. "You are lonely." Ethan had no answer. For the first time in years, he simply listened to the rain, to the hum of the city, and to the woman beside him who saw past his fortune. And somewhere deep inside, something began to shift. The party was still going strong when Ethan and Maya returned inside. The air shimmered with perfume and champagne laughter. Everywhere they went, eyes followed them. People whispered, half curious, half envious. It was exactly what Ethan had planned, and yet, somehow, nothing like he had imagined. Maya handled herself like she had done this her whole life. She thanked the waiters, listened when people spoke, and smiled without pretense. The men admired her, the women wanted to know her name. Ethan realized he was watching her more than anyone else. At one point, Isabella approached again, holding a glass of white wine and that perfect, cold smile. "So, Maya, how long have you known Ethan?" Maya met her gaze calmly. "A short time, but sometimes it does not take long to recognize sincerity." The words landed sharp, and even Isabella's fiancé shifted awkwardly. Ethan almost smiled. For the first time, he felt no bitterness. He simply felt free. Later that evening, a band started playing slow jazz. Couples moved toward the dance floor. Maya turned toward Ethan. "If you want to complete the illusion, now is the time." He offered his hand. "You are surprisingly strategic for a waitress." She smiled. Survival teaches strategy. They stepped into the soft, golden light. Ethan's hand rested at her waist, her fingers light on his shoulder. The music swelled, low and warm. Around them, voices faded. He looked down, and for the first time since his heartbreak, he forgot to measure the distance between himself and someone else. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" she asked. "For not pretending," he said. Her eyes softened. "That is funny. I thought pretending was exactly what you hired me for." Ethan smiled faintly but did not answer. The song ended, and the applause around them broke the moment. When the night drew to a close, they walked outside together. The driver waited by the car, but Maya lingered near the hotel steps, looking out at the city skyline. "You can go home now," Ethan said quietly. "The job is done." She nodded but did not move. "You really think that party changed anything?" "It reminded me of who I used to be," he said, "and what I lost trying to look strong." Maya looked up at him. "Maybe strength is not pretending you are fine. Maybe it is choosing to feel something again." Ethan met her eyes. For a moment, the noise of the street fell away. He wanted to say something, anything, but the driver opened the door, breaking the silence. On the way back, the car was quiet. Maya watched the city lights flicker past, their reflections sliding across Ethan's face. He looked almost peaceful. When the car stopped at her apartment building, she turned to him. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said. "It was unusual, but I hope it helped." "It did," he said softly. "More than you think." She smiled and stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Ethan sat in the back seat for a long time before finally telling the driver to go. When he got home, the silence of his penthouse felt heavier than usual. He loosened his tie, walked to the window, and stared out at the sleeping city. For the first time, the view did not comfort him. It felt distant, hollow. He thought of Maya's laughter, the way she had stood up to Isabella, the steadiness in her eyes. The next morning, he found himself reading an article online. Who is Ethan Cole's mysterious date? It was already everywhere. Photos of them dancing filled the screen. But what caught his attention was not the gossip, it was the comments. People called her genuine, kind, refreshingly real. He exhaled slowly. Maybe he had created this story to prove something to his ex, but instead, it had shown him something about himself. He scrolled again, stopping at one photo, Maya laughing mid-sentence. He smiled faintly. He whispered to himself, maybe it is time to see her again, without a contract. 2 days passed before Ethan finally gathered the nerve to call her. His message was short, careful, almost formal. "Maya, I would like to return your payment in person. There is something I need to say. Meet me at Brooks Bistro, 7 p.m. The irony struck him only later. The restaurant shared her last name, though she had no connection to it. When she arrived that evening, the place glowed under soft amber light, the same warm tone that filled his memories from the night they met. Maya stepped in wearing a simple blue dress, not the glamorous one from the party, but something that looked entirely her. Ethan stood as she approached, sliding his phone into his pocket. "I thought you were serious when you said the job was over," she said. "I was," he replied, "but I realized something after the photos went public. I owe you more than money." She raised an eyebrow. "You do not owe me anything. I agreed to it." Ethan's tone softened. "I owe you honesty." He paused, searching for the right words. "The night of the engagement, you reminded me what it feels like to see people without judgment. I forgot that somewhere along the way." Maya studied him for a long moment. "You think one evening changes a person?" "Sometimes one evening is all it takes," he said quietly. She sighed, glancing at the empty tables around them. "Ethan, you are kind when you want to be. But your world and mine, they do not mix. You live in boardrooms. I live paycheck to paycheck." He leaned forward slightly. "And yet, for one night, they did mix. That should mean something." Her eyes flickered with emotion before she looked away. "It means we were pretending well." Ethan hesitated, then reached into his jacket and placed an envelope on the table. "Your payment. I want you to keep it. Use it for something that makes you happy." She shook her head. "I already paid the rent. The rest should go to someone who actually needs it." And he smiled faintly. "You never make things easy." "That is not my job," she said with a half smile. "Remember, the contract ended." He looked down at the table, then back at her. "What if I want to start a new one? No signatures, no rules, just dinner, tomorrow night." Maya laughed softly. "You really do not give up, do you?" "Not when something feels real," he said. Before she could respond, a phone buzzed on the table. It was Ethan's assistant. The message was urgent. "Press leaked more photos. Board demanding explanation. Damage control meeting tomorrow morning." His jaw tightened. Maya saw the change in his face. "Trouble?" He sighed. "Apparently, some people think I staged the relationship to boost the company's image." "Did you?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, almost offended. "No, but the world loves a scandal." She stood up slowly. "Then handle it, Mr. Cole. That is your world, not mine." Ethan rose as she turned to leave. "Maya, wait." She stopped at the door, her silhouette outlined by the glow from outside. "You wanted something real, remember? Then stop letting everyone else decide what that means." The door closed softly behind her. Ethan remained there, motionless, listening to the clatter of dishes and the faint music in the background. He knew she was right. For the first time, he wanted to protect something not for appearance or profit, but because it mattered. The next morning, reporters filled the lobby of his office building. His publicist handed him a stack of statements to read, each one carefully written to deny everything. Ethan looked at them, then pushed the papers away. I am not lying, he said, not about her. As he walked into the boardroom, the flash of cameras followed him. He straightened his tie and whispered under his breath, "This time, no pretending." Oh. Inside, he faced the crowd of executives and reporters waiting for his response. He took a deep breath and said firmly, "Yes, I attended that event with Maya Brooks. Yes, she was paid for one evening. But what began as a contract became something far more genuine, and I will not apologize for that." The room fell silent. The truth had been spoken. For a moment, no one in the boardroom moved. Cameras clicked, flashes went off, and the sound echoed against the glass walls like a storm breaking. Ethan stood tall, calm but resolute. His confession had left the room breathless. One of the senior board members leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Mr. Cole, do you understand the consequences of what you just admitted? The press will run wild with this." Ethan nodded. "Let them. I would rather be seen as human than as a headline built on lies." There was a pause. Then the man sighed. "Your integrity is admirable, but your timing is terrible." When the meeting ended, Ethan walked out into the morning light. Reporters swarmed the front steps, shouting questions. He ignored them, stepping straight into his car. For the first time in years, he felt lighter, though he had no idea what the fallout would be. Across town, Maya was at the small community center where she volunteered on weekends. Children's laughter mixed with the sound of paintbrushes tapping against jars. She was helping hang art projects when her phone buzzed with a flood of notifications. Her friends were texting links to a viral video. She tapped one open. The headline read, "Millionaire admits fake date turned real. Public confession. Shocks investors." The video showed Ethan standing before the press, his voice steady. "What began as a contract became something genuine, and I will not apologize for that." The crowd in the background had gasped, then applauded. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. She replayed the clip twice, trying to understand what she was feeling. Anger, pride, confusion, all at once. That evening, she walked home through the fading sunlight. The world seemed quieter than usual. When she reached her apartment, she found an envelope taped to her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper written in Ethan's handwriting. "I meant every word. No contracts, no lies. Just a chance to see where honesty leads. E.M." She stared at the note for a long time. Then, almost against her own logic, she smiled. The next morning, she showed up at the front desk of Cole Industries. The receptionist blinked in surprise. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Cole is in a meeting." "That is all right," Maya said. "Tell him I will wait." When Ethan finally stepped out, he froze at the sight of her. "Maya." She held out the letter. "You forgot one thing," she said softly. "If you want honesty, you have to listen too." He looked at her carefully. "I am listening. I do not need grand gestures," she continued. "I do not need news cameras or expensive restaurants. I just need you to mean what you say when no one is watching." Ethan's expression softened. "Then let me start now." He motioned for her to follow him outside. The city was buzzing, but in the small courtyard behind the building, everything was still. A cool breeze rustled the leaves. He turned to her, his voice low. "I spent years protecting my image. Every move, every word calculated. And then you walked in someone who had nothing to gain and still stood beside me." Maya looked down, her cheeks flushed. "I did it because it felt right." He took a small step closer. "Then let us see if feeling right can build something real." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The tension that had once come from pride and fear now felt like possibility. Maya smiled faintly. "You realize the tabloids will not leave us alone for weeks." Ethan chuckled. "Let them try. I have already told the truth." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small folded paper, the original contract he had given her. Without a word, she tore it cleanly in half and let the pieces fall into the fountain nearby. "Now we are even," she said. Ethan laughed softly, relief and warmth in his voice. "You just made my favorite business deal of all time." The water rippled, carrying away the last fragments of their old bargain. And as they stood there beneath the morning sun, the noise of the city faded into the distance. For once, there were no cameras, no conditions, just two people choosing to begin again. Weeks passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again. The scandal that had filled headlines began to fade, replaced by new gossip and newer distractions. Ethan Cole returned to his office, but everything felt different. The endless meetings and the polished boardroom speeches seemed smaller somehow, less urgent. Every morning, he stopped by the same cafe where Maya liked to sketch between shifts. Sometimes she was already there, her notebook open, a pencil moving softly across the page. She never looked up when he entered, but she always smiled when he sat down across from her. They talked about ordinary things, her mother's recovery, his new charity project, the weather. Yet, even in silence, there was a quiet understanding between them. Ethan found peace in those moments, something he had not known he needed. One afternoon, as spring rain tapped against the windows, Ethan placed a folder on the table. "I want to show you something," he said. Maya opened it and blinked. Inside were sketches of a building, a community art studio designed for low-income students. "What is this?" she asked. "It is your idea," he replied. "You once told me you wanted a space where people could feel seen. I have the funds, you have the vision. I want to help you make it real." Maya looked stunned. "Ethan, this is huge. I cannot accept something like this." "You can," he said gently, "because this time it is not charity, it is partnership." Her eyes glistened. She reached out, covering his hand. "Thank you. I mean that," he smiled. "Then we will call it the Brooks Studio, a place built on honesty." Oh, a few weeks later, the studio opened its doors. The small brick building stood between an old bakery and a flower shop, the sign above hand-painted by Maya herself. On opening day, children ran through the halls, brushes and paints in hand, their laughter echoing off the new walls. Ethan watched from the doorway, hands in his pockets, his expression soft. Maya approached, wiping a smudge of paint from her cheek. "You are going to ruin your suit standing there," she teased. He shrugged. "It is worth it." They shared a quiet laugh, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly simple. But simplicity never lasted long in Ethan's world. Later that evening, as the crowd cleared and the sun dipped below the skyline, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Isabella. She looked polished as ever, but her eyes carried a flicker of unease. "Maya," she began, her tone controlled, "I came to speak with Ethan." Maya glanced at Ethan, who nodded gently. "It is all right," he said. Isabella stepped closer. "Ethan, I saw the news about your new foundation. I came to say congratulations." Ethan nodded politely. "Thank you. But that is all behind me now." Her lips tightened. "You always did have a way of moving on quickly." He met her gaze evenly. "Maybe it is not about moving on. Maybe it is about finally standing still with the right person." Maya watched quietly from the side. Isabella's expression faltered for a heartbeat before she turned away. "I hope she knows how lucky she is," she said, her voice softer now. When she left, the door closed with a gentle chime. Ethan turned toward Maya. "Are you all right?" She smiled faintly. "Better than fine. I think that was the closure you needed." He exhaled slowly, relief passing through him. "Maybe, but what I really needed was this." He gestured around the laughter, the warmth, the smell of paint and coffee. "Something real." Maya looked around too, her eyes shining. "Then we finally built it," she said. Ethan nodded. "Together." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the evening lights. Inside the Brooks studio, laughter continued to echo a sound that no amount of money could ever buy. The next few weeks were peaceful, almost too peaceful. The Brooks studio had become a local success. Newspapers called it a haven for creativity, and parents lined up to enroll their children in weekend classes. Maya's name was on the door, but everyone knew who had helped build it. Ethan often visited in the evenings, rolling up his sleeves to help clean brushes or hang paintings. The way he moved among the students, listening to their stories, laughing at their jokes, was nothing like the man who once hid behind power and numbers. Maya saw it too, and it made her chest tighten with quiet pride. One Friday afternoon, a storm rolled over the city again, the kind of gray rain that reminded them both of how everything had started. Maya was locking up the studio when she noticed a crowd forming near the street. Someone was holding a phone, filming. "Is that?" one of the teens whispered. "That is Ethan Cole." She turned. Across the street, Ethan was surrounded by reporters. They were shouting questions, holding out microphones. "Mr. Cole, is it true you plan to transfer part of your company's assets to the Brooks Foundation? Are you giving up your position as CEO? Is this because of Miss Brooks?" Maya's stomach dropped. She ran toward the commotion just as Ethan raised his hand to calm them. His voice was steady but firm. "I am restructuring the company," he said. Half of my personal earnings will go into community development, including the Brooks studio. The crowd erupted with noise. One reporter pushed forward, shouting, "So you are doing all this for her?" Ethan paused, his gaze finding Maya's across the street. The world around them blurred the rain, the flashbulbs, the shouting. He smiled faintly. "Yes," he said, "for her. For what she reminded me of." The statement hit the internet within minutes. By the next morning, his name was trending again. Millionaire gives up fortune for love. Ethan Cole redeems his legacy. Maya spent the night restless. Part of her was proud, but another part was afraid. She knew how cruel the public eye could be. When Ethan arrived at the studio the next day, she confronted him before he could even say hello. "Why would you do that?" He looked at her calmly. "Because I needed to put my money where my heart is." "You did not have to make it about me," she said, her voice trembling. "You worked your whole life for that company." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his coat. "And I nearly lost my soul doing it. You gave me back what mattered. If the world wants to call that love, I will not deny it." Maya stared at him, her throat tight. "You cannot fix every part of your past with grand gestures." He smiled gently. "Maybe not, but I can choose who I become next." Silence filled the space between them. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant. Finally, she whispered, "I do not need your money, Ethan. I just need you to stay." "I am staying," he said simply. They stood there as the rain softened into mist. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the torn remains of the old contract now taped back together. "Do you know why I kept this?" She shook her head. "Because it reminds me where we began, and because I want to rewrite it." He unfolded a single new sheet of paper beneath it. "This time, the only term is honesty." Maya's eyes filled with tears as she took the pen from his hand. "Then I will sign that." He smiled. "So will I." Outside, the storm finally broke apart, leaving streaks of sunlight cutting through the clouds. The city glistened, and the sign above the door, the Brooks studio, gleamed in gold. For the first time, neither of them were pretending. They were exactly who they were, two people who had walked through the noise and found something worth holding on to. A month later, the city began to speak of Ethan Cole in a new tone. The same journalists who once chased his scandals now praised his courage. His decision to turn part of his company into a social foundation had sparked copycat programs across the country. But behind all the headlines, Ethan and Maya kept their world small, just morning coffee, paint on their hands, and evenings that smelled of rain and possibility. One afternoon, while Maya was teaching a group of children how to blend colors, a courier arrived with a thick envelope. The letterhead read Cole Industries. She frowned, wiped her hands, and opened it. Inside was an official invitation embossed with gold. "The board of directors cordially invites you to the annual charity gala honoring the Cole Foundation and its partners." At the bottom, in neat handwriting, Ethan had added a note. "You once told me I hide behind titles. This time, will you stand beside me as yourself? No roles, no masks." When she looked up, Ethan was standing at the doorway, a hopeful smile on his face. "I promised myself I would never attend another gala," she said, half teasing. He shrugged lightly. "Then consider it an art exhibit. You are the masterpiece." The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers, echoing the first night they had met, though everything felt different now. There were no contracts, no secrets, just two people who had earned the right to walk into the room together. When they entered, the crowd turned. Whispers filled the air, but this time there was admiration instead of gossip. Maya wore a deep emerald gown that shimmered as she moved. Ethan offered her his arm, proud and unguarded. Midway through the event, the host took the stage. "Tonight, we honor the Brooks Studio for its outstanding community service and impact on underprivileged youth. Please welcome its founder, Maya Brooks." Applause filled the room as she stepped onto the stage. Maya took a deep breath, her voice steady but warm. "A few months ago, I was just someone trying to make rent. Then a stranger gave me a chance, one that began as a mistake but became a purpose. This studio is not about wealth or names. It is about kindness that does not need a price tag." Her words drew quiet nods and tears from the audience. When she stepped down, Ethan met her halfway, his eyes shining with pride. "You were incredible," he whispered. As the music began again, he took her hand and led her to the center of the floor. The band played a soft waltz. Around them, Cameras flashed, but neither of them cared. For the first time, they were dancing without pretending. Halfway through the song, Ethan leaned close. "Do you remember the night I asked you to pretend to be my date?" Maya laughed softly. "Hard to forget. You were impossible back then." He smiled. "Then let me ask you something new." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. The crowd's murmur faded to silence. Maya froze, her hand trembling slightly. Ethan's voice was calm but full of emotion. "I have signed a lot of contracts in my life, but this is the only one that matters. No conditions, no terms, just a promise." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. "Maya Brooks, will you marry me for real this time?" Gasps rippled through the room. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the man who had once built walls of pride and learned to tear them down. She smiled through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The audience erupted into applause. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her hand gently. Under the chandelier's glow, they held each other close as the music swelled around them. This time there were no contracts, no secrets, no doubts. Just truth and the quiet, undeniable proof that love, when built on honesty, could outshine even the brightest city lights. The sound of applause still echoed in Ethan's ears long after the gala ended. That night, as the guests drifted out beneath the city's glittering skyline, he and Maya slipped away quietly. The driver offered to take them home, but Ethan shook his head. "Let us walk," he said. They wandered through the quiet streets, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. The air was cool and filled with the scent of spring rain. Maya held his arm, the ring on her finger catching the light from passing cars. Neither of them spoke for a while. They did not need to. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. They stopped at a small bridge overlooking the river. The same kind of place where they might have passed each other before any of this began, two strangers in the same city, unaware that their lives were about to collide. Ethan leaned on the railing and looked out at the rippling water. "I used to think success meant never slowing down," he said quietly. "That if I just kept moving, I would not have to feel anything. But tonight, standing there with you, I realized something. Slowing down is not failure, it is finally living." Maya smiled softly. "Maybe love is not about changing who we are, Ethan. Maybe it is about becoming who we were meant to be all along." He turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then I am exactly where I am supposed to be." A gentle wind stirred her hair. Ethan reached out, brushing a strand away from her face. For a moment, time seemed to pause the noise of the city fading until all that remained was the rhythm of the river and their hearts. Weeks later, the world began to celebrate them not as a scandal, but as a story of redemption. The Brooks studio expanded into 3 more cities. The Cole Foundation sponsored hundreds of scholarships for young artists. Reporters who once called Maya the fake date now called her the woman who changed a millionaire's life. Yet to them, it was never about fame. Their days settled into a simple patterned coffee at sunrise, teaching at the studio, quiet dinners on the balcony of their shared home. Every evening, Ethan left his phone on silent. The man who once chased meetings now chasing sunsets. One afternoon, Maya stood in front of a new class of students. The walls were covered with paintings, bright, imperfect, full of life. She smiled as a little boy tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Maya, is that you in the photo with the man on the wall?" he asked, pointing to a picture of her and Ethan from the gala night. She nodded. "Yes, that is us. But the important part is not the fancy clothes. It is the story behind it." "What story?" he asked. "The story of how pretending can sometimes lead you to what is real," she said gently. "And how love is not about wealth or fame. It is about choosing kindness, even when the world is watching." Later that evening, Ethan arrived to pick her up. The sunset painted gold across the studio windows. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a key engraved with the initials E and M. "What is this?" she asked, smiling. "Our home," he said. "Not a mansion, not a tower, just a place with space for love, paint, and peace." She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "Sounds perfect." Ethan looked out at the street, the sign above glowing faintly in the fading light. "The Brooks studio," he whispered. "From a contract to forever." Maya smiled. "From a lie to something true." As the last light of day fell across their faces, the city hummed softly around them. They had walked through pride, through pretense, through every misunderstanding and had arrived at something lasting. No headlines, no staged smiles, just two people who had learned that the greatest contract of all is the one written not in ink, but in trust. And that was how their story ended, not with a signature, but with a promise kept.